Dave, you ever like crashed a plane or anything?
Well, we don't like to use that word.
Oh, okay.
That's not a nice word. But if you were to ask me if I've ever had a serious incident, I would say yes. So we don't like that word crash, okay? We would say incident.
Serious.
So the question is, have you ever had a serious incident? And sadly, the answer is yes. About 27 years ago in 1990, I was flying a single Comanche back from Florida, a holiday trip to Florida with my now ex-wife and my son, who was then 15. And we had taken off. It was a hot summer day. We had taken off from Savannah, Georgia, and we were flying direct to Charleston, West Virginia.
Okay.
And it was a 3-4 hour trip, 3 hour and 40-minute trip. And I had loaded 5 hours of fuel on board. I could have loaded 6 hours, but 5 was plenty. So we had 5 hours of fuel, and we were only about 8 or 10 miles out of Charlie West, as we call it, Charleston, West Virginia. And I just started a descent. And
so you're coming in for the approach now.
Yeah, just started the descent to an initial approach into Charlie West, descending out of 8,500 feet, and the engine quit. And this is an occurrence that always gets everybody's full attention when the engine quits.
Yeah, no
so I just kind of went on auto mode and switched tanks from right tank to left tank. Bingo, the engine's running again. But I knew I had an hour and a half fuel left. I had 5 hours of fuel. We were 3.5 hours in, and I had been balancing the tanks. So I knew I had 45 minutes of fuel left in each tank.
Okay.
So my son said, he was beside me, my wife was in the back, and he said, what happened? And I said, I don't know. I've got lots of fuel in the right side. Maybe I got some bad fuel or, some contamination that blocked the fuel line. But anyways, we got 3/4 an hour in the left tank, and we're only 6 minutes to Charlie West. And about 2 minutes later, the engine quit again. By this time, I'm down to about 1,000 feet above the mountains. Unfortunately, this is about the only place east of the Rockies where an engine failure is going to be a serious threat to your life, because it's the West Virginia Hollows. It's the mountains of West Virginia.
Right.
So we were, the engine quit again, and I did everything I could, checked everything, and called the Mayday on the radio and said, I'm going in. And in fact, we did go in. I was weaving my way in a valley. I just got to switch tanks here. Okay.
So at 1,000 feet, you're only 6 or 8 miles out. That's not enough to glide in.
No, not nearly enough.
Okay.
And I might have been 10 or 12 miles. But,
okay.
So the airport elevation is about 1,000 feet above sea level, which is about the height of the tops of these hills. And then there's valleys underneath them.
Okay.
And so I ended up, and the visibility was very poor. The visibility was 3 miles in haze, so you really couldn't see much. I declared an emergency. The controller said, you can't see any pavement down there, because I said, I'm going down into the trees. He said, you can't see any pavement, and that was the last conversation we had. And anyways, I ended up gliding into this valley, and I was just hoping to God it would widen out and straighten out, but it didn't. It was curving. And I was in a tight turn just to line up with the valley when I was down to minimum altitude. And when I come out of the tight turn, my left wingtip hit the side of the hill, turned us around. We crashed down onto a road, which I hadn't even seen. We come around the corner, and we skidded backwards, actually, across this road and stopped. 162 feet from the initial point of impact, we were stopped.
How fast are you going when you actually touched?
Probably about 80 miles an hour.
Okay.
And I had not put the wheels down, so we crashed right down on the belly. The wheels were up, crashed right down on the belly. And so then I was all three of us appeared to be okay.
So you finally come to an end, and you kind of look around?
Stop. Oh, I looked around, and it was the noisiest occurrence of my whole life.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, an airplane crash is a noisy affair. Very noisy. And there's dust swirling around. And the door was open. The door's on the right side. So I hollered to Court, get your mother out, because I was afraid of fire.
Fire, right.
Because we'd skidded across. I'm sure there was sparks flying. And I get your mother out. So he pulled her out. And, of course, the airplane's lying on its belly. My seat had been knocked into the back, sort of, and I went to get out and I couldn't move. My back it turned out I'd pulled a muscle badly. I couldn't move, so he had to help me out. And we get out. The dust is still swirling. There's a helicopter circling overhead.
Is this like a town that you crashed in? Like
No, it's about 5 miles out of the town.
Okay.
It's a little windy road. There's houses on both sides of us. There's power lines on both sides of this road, which I'd missed. I didn't see any of this when I was coming in due to the poor visibility and turning around the corners. So, I mean, so Court got me to my feet, and the dust is still swirling. And over here, there's a guy with his hand up holding traffic in the middle of the road, stopping traffic. And over on the left side, there's an ambulance parked across the road.
Already.
Yeah, and a helicopter circling overhead, and there's about 5 or 6 hillbillies. This is hillbilly country, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
And they're standing there saying things, holy shit, Ellie Mae, I never saw nothing like this before. And anyways, I said, Court, you know, I reached out to them. I said, can you help me? And Court was helping me across the road, and one of them reached out his hand, and this ambulance driver come running over and grabbed my other elbow. And I said, where did you come from? Because I see the ambulance. He said, well, sir, that's our office right there.
So just, oh, really?
I'd missed it by about 60 feet.
You stopped outside.
Just stopped outdoors, yeah. So anyways, that was the story. The helicopter, the controller, he got off my channel, and there was a helicopter working over the city doing some photography work, and he sent them over towards us before we even hit.
Oh.
So that's what he was doing. And the controller, I didn't meet him the next day when we left town, commercial airline. I went to the airport, and I asked to meet him, but he was off sick for 2 days. He booked off. He was so upset, because they didn't know for 10 minutes whether we were alive or dead.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so that's the story.
What goes through your mind when you're coming? Like, are you guys screaming in the thing, or is it just
No. I mean, everybody was scared. I said to Judy, you know, belts tight. I said about 3 times, tighten your belts, tighten your belts. She had just read a novel about an airplane crash, so she knew all about this stuff. She reached up to the hat shelf behind her and got out a bag of laundry and buried her head between her knees in the laundry.
Oh, really?
Assumed the position, because he just read all about it. So she missed the whole crash. She didn't see a thing. She was head down. And so why did the engine quit? Well, I didn't find out for 10 days later when they lifted the airplane up. Well, they took it. It was in the middle of the road. So they removed it very quickly to a salvage yard, and then they lifted it up. And they see a big fuel streak down the belly. So then they started looking. In the Comanche, which is a low-wing airplane, the fuel, of course, is out in the wings.
Yep.
And there's a fuel line, which is aluminum, just an aluminum line. Runs from there and up to the top of the engine. Of course, there's an engine-driven fuel pump. And at some stage, in the past, some engineer had this fuel line off, and he'd rebent it rather than replacing it. It's probably $1 a foot, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than replace it, he'd rebent it. And I guess after a few hundred hours of vibration, it had opened up on the seam.
Yeah.
So what happened, in hindsight, this fuel line opened up, spraying fuel all over the engine. We're lucky we didn't have a fire.
Yeah.
Emptied the right tank. The engine quits. I didn't know what was going on. I switched tanks to the left tank. Great, the engine's running again until the fuel pump pumped all that fuel overboard, and then we're out of fuel. So in a way, it was, you know, if I had to crash, just as well I didn't have any fuel, or we could probably have had a fire.
That's actually insane. And how did you decide not to put the landing gear down?
Well, when you put the gear down in one of these airplanes, it's tremendous drag. So you're shortening your glide quite dramatically.
Oh.
And I was trying to preserve the glide.
Okay.
And as it happened, it was lucky. I mean, if you read the book, you're supposed to put the gear down because it'll absorb impact.
Oh, okay.
You know, if you're crashing, it'll absorb some impacts. But I tell you, I didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
I from the time the engine quit the second time till we were on the ground crashed, was probably less than a minute.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
So you're dropping fast then.
Yeah.
That's such a wild experience. I'm surprised you flew again.
Well, I tried a week later, once I could walk again, because my back was in a lot of pain. I actually spent the night in the hospital.
Okay.
I was worried I had a real problem, but they did x-rays, and it was just a pulled muscle. So that was but a week later, I was still very sore, but I tried out another Comanche out of Buttonville Airport, and I got it up to altitude with the owner, and I was cleaning it out. The engine went a little bit rough. It was a bit... I don't like that sound.
So I think, like, does insurance cover that, or like?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a...
Yeah, so we lost the airplane, which is replaceable, but none of us got hurt. So it was
that's amazing.
A good outcome. Yeah. My ex-wife never flew again.
That was it.
Ever.
I'm not sure if I would. Like, if you crash this thing right now, we glided in, I might not ever get into another airplane again.